Hello, and welcome to this recorded sermon from the Ipswich Methodist Circuit. My name is Steve Mann, and I'm a minister in the circuit looking after churches at the southern end at Capel St Mary, Bramford, Elmset, Holbrook, Chelmerdiston, and Brantham. And whoever you are, however you come to be watching this, wherever you're watching it from, you're very, very welcome. Do you remember the song called The Blessing that was very popular? It was written in the early part of 2020, just before the first COVID lockdown, but it became very popular at that time, particularly when it was recorded by a whole host of Christian singers from around the world in their own homes and then threaded together on Zoom or something similar. But the words of that song were taken pretty much directly from the Bible book of Numbers. And in Numbers, they're given as a blessing that the priest can use to bless the people. And these are the words that I'm sure you're familiar with. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Imagine, though, what it feels like to experience the opposite of that. When we don't feel blessed and kept by God, when we don't feel that his face is shining on us or even turned towards us, when we feel no peace whatsoever. Actually, we don't have to imagine, because whoever wrote Psalm 13 was feeling exactly like that. This is what they say: How long, Lord? Will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and day to day have sorrow in my heart? There's an honesty to Psalms like this, and it's not alone in the Bible, that the writer Walter Brueggemann suggests can be missing from our churches today. His conclusion is that we can be afraid to speak out honestly when we're going through hard times, because we perceive to speak negatively like that can suggest that God has failed or somehow is not in control. By contrast, he feels that such speaking out can be described as an act of bold faith rather than of questioning or doubting faith. Here's what he says: It's an act of bold faith on the one hand, because it insists that the world must be experienced as it really is and not in some pretended way. On the other hand, it is bold because it insists that all such experiences of disorder are a proper subject for discourse with God. Nothing is out of bounds. Nothing is precluded or inappropriate. Everything properly belongs to this conversation of the heart. To withhold parts of life from that conversation is, in fact, to withhold part of life from the sovereignty of God. There are many situations in which people might feel, as the writer of Psalm 13 did, that sense of distance from God or even abandonment. The key takeaway, though, isn't to question why such experiences happen to us, but to know that we can speak about them openly and honestly to others and to God. We love hearing people's testimonies in church, don't we? But usually they speak of victories won or lives being transformed. But surely it's just as much a part of our testimony to say that we're going through an absolutely awful time at the moment and we're just about clinging on by our fingertips, but that we're still looking to the promises of God, even though we feel that God's face is temporarily hidden from us. The psalmist holds nothing back in directing their complaint to God and asking that God will remedy their situation. Look on me and answer, they say, Lord my God. Give light to my eyes, or I will sleep in death, and my enemy will say, I have overcome him, and my foes will rejoice when I fall. Give light to my eyes. I love the way that the New Living Translation puts that slightly differently, with the psalmist asking that God will restore the sparkle to my eyes. We all know what it feels like to lose that spark or that sparkle within us. We also all know what it feels like to be wrestling with our thoughts, as the psalmist says, and to have no rest from them, to have them just going round and round and round in our head. Any number of things can leave us feeling like that. Most commentators agree that it's probably illness and the possibility of death that is being referred to in this particular psalm. But physical illness can do that, or mental health issues, so many other things. And I also think there's a certain poetry in the idea that when we feel that God's face is no longer shining upon us, then we stop shining too. The psalmist doesn't remain silent, and neither should we. They cry out to God to do something to take away the torment that they are feeling. One commentator has described the three parts of the psalm, and they're very short parts because it's a very short psalm, but described the three parts of the psalm like this: that first of all there is pain, then there is prayer, and those two bits are the bits we've looked at so far. But finally there is praise. But I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation. I will sing the Lord's praise, for he has been good to me. We might think that that comes as a bit of a surprise. How can the person that's just cried out to God in a state of anguish and perceived abandonment suddenly switch to proclaiming that they trust in God's unfailing love and rejoice in God's salvation? And it's not just here that that happens, by the way, but in other Psalms too. Perhaps most famously because Jesus quoted the opening words from the cross from Psalm 22, which begins, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Yet moves on to a far more positive tone in praise of God's saving power. In order to understand what's going on in Psalms like these two, let's look at the words of a hymn that we met earlier if you're following the printed service that accompanies this sermon. And it's from the hymn Cornerstone. When darkness seems to hide his face, I rest on his unchanging grace. In every high and stormy gale, my anchor holds within the veil. The reference there to the veil is the veil of the temple that separated the presence of God in the Holy of Holies from the people who were, well, on the other side of the veil. And that veil, of course, was torn in two when Jesus died on the cross. The hymn writer is saying that when we go through the kinds of experiences described in Psalm 13, that darkness in which God appears hidden can feel like the veil is back in place once again with us on one side and God hopelessly distant on the other. Nevertheless, they say that at a deeper level than feelings, we must hold on to the fact that we are anchored with an anchor that will always hold, because it really is anchored in the person of God. You probably know the story behind the hymn "It Is Well With My Soul." Horatio Spafford, who wrote that hymn, lost his four daughters when their ship sank, yet could write immediately afterwards, "When peace like a river attends my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot you have taught me to know, it is well with my soul." I don't mind admitting that for a long time I had problems with those lines. How, I thought, could he write as though the loss of his daughters was a small matter, almost as if it didn't really matter to him. Surely, I thought this was a man who was suppressing his feelings and emotions. It was only recently that the penny dropped. This isn't about emotions and feelings at all, but it's about something at a deeper level than that. I have absolutely no doubt that Horatio Spafford was going through exactly what we would have gone through in that situation, real torment in his emotions. He could easily have been feeling the sense of abandonment and of darkness, hiding the face of God that we've been talking about. Yet he was given the same insight as the psalmist, that at a deeper level than that, his anchor still held, and that he could fall back on the unfailing love of God. Again, if you're using the printed service, you'll be aware that it starts with the hymn Blessed Be the Name of the Lord, written by Matt and Beth Redman. It's a hymn that speaks about worshipping God in the best of times and also in the worst of times. Blessed be your name, it says, when the sun's shining down on me, when the world's all as it should be. Blessed be your name on the road marked with suffering, though there's pain in the offering. Every blessing you pour out, I'll turn back to praise. When the darkness closes in, Lord, still I will say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Those lines came out of the Redmonds being in America just after the 9/11 tragedy. And they came to a realization similar to those observations of Walter Brueggemann earlier, that the church was top heavy with what they describe as songs of victory, but that it didn't have much to help people through the emotional shock and trauma of that time. The truth is, they say, the Church of God needs her songs of lament just as much as she needs her songs of victory. And they go on. A few weeks after 9/11, we wrote the worship song, Blessed Be Your Name. It wasn't written consciously in response to those dark events, but no doubt being immersed in the spiritual and emotional climate of those days was an important factor in birthing it. Many people ask if there was a particular life event that triggered off the writing of this song, and in all truth, the answer is no. It's really a song born out of the whole of life, a realization that we will all face seasons of pain or unease. And in these seasons, we will need to find our voice before God. The message of Psalm 13 and the other examples we've looked at today is that it is okay to sound off to God when emotionally we're in a terrible place. It's not just okay, but even necessary. As the Redmonds said, we need to find our voice before God. But we also need to know that alongside those tormented emotions, there is a deeper level. Whatever we call it, whether we call it heart or soul or something else, a deeper level where we can know that we are anchored and anchored in a God who, even if he feels hidden by the darkness, will never let us down. May God bless you until we meet again.
The Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn